In the Mojave Desert, surrounded by endless dust, rattlesnakes, and silence, stands one of America's most misunderstood federal fortresses, USP Victorville. A place where gang politics rewrite the rules of survival, alliances shift like sandstorms, and every step in the yard could be your final one. But beyond the razor wire lies a truth the public rarely sees. Victorville isn't just a prison, it's a pressure cooker built to contain the unstoppable. Before we step into the desert stronghold known as USP Victorville, take a second to hit the subscribe button, turn on notifications, and join our growing community of viewers who dive deep into the hidden world of America's most dangerous institutions. Your support lets us bring you the stories few dare to investigate. Now, let's enter the desert fortress. USP Victorville does not look like a place built for human beings. It looks like something carved out of war: thick concrete walls, angular watchtowers, and vast stretches of desert that trap heat in the day and steal it at night. From a distance, the complex almost blends into the Mojave landscape, as if trying to disappear into the very harshness that surrounds it. The prison was built on the grounds of the old George Air Force Base, a Cold War relic abandoned and left to decay. When the Federal Bureau of Prisons took over the land, the transformation was swift and unforgiving. What used to be runways for fighter jets became the home of a high-security penitentiary meant for men the government believed required the strongest possible cage. Drug kingpins, violent offenders, gang shot callers, men with long sentences, nothing to lose, and everything to prove. Inside, the architecture follows a philosophy: containment before comfort. Housing units are designed as stacked tiers, each lined with solid cell doors, narrow windows, and harsh fluorescent lights that never quite let a man forget where he is. Every inch of the space, from the echoing hallways to the metal tables bolted to the ground, speaks the same sentence: you're not leaving. But what sets Victorville apart isn't just the concrete or the razor wire, it's the environment. The desert turns everything into a test. Summers regularly breach triple-digit temperatures, with heat radiating off the yard like a furnace. Winters drop shockingly low, and the wind sweeps in with sand that stings the skin like glass. Even costs talk about the environment as if it were alive, an unpredictable force that shapes the behaviors and tensions inside the walls. And tensions are always present. Victorville is notorious for housing inmates from multiple high-risk groups: Serenos, Nautinos, Bloods, Crips, Paisas, and independent inmates navigating the ever-changing politics of federal prison life. Those politics are enforced by invisible lines, geographical, racial, and ideological, and crossing one often leads to violence. Rumors spread among new arrivals before they even touch the yard. Stories of the Victorville Shuffle circulate when inmates are moved rapidly after incidents, when alliances shift, when stabbings erupt without warning. Most inmates say the same thing: Victorville ain't a place where you come to rest. It's a place where you come to stay ready. In the chow hall, eyes never stop scanning. In the housing units, conversations happen in low tones behind closed doors. On the yard, every movement is calculated, because a single misstep can put a man in the line of fire, literally. The institution has seen multiple riots, high-profile assaults, and gang-related conflicts that rarely make the evening news but shake the prison population for months. Yet, within this hostility, routines exist. Men work unicorn jobs, producing furniture and equipment for government agencies. Others spend time in education programs, hoping to earn the credits needed to transfer to a lower security prison. For some, these opportunities become lifelines, a way to hold onto a sense of humanity. But for others, the programs are merely background noise in a place where survival demands attention at all times. Despite its grim reputation, Victorville functions with military precision. Count times happen like clockwork. Movement is controlled and monitored. Officers rotate through their posts with practiced vigilance. And yet, even with all the structure, the desert fortress remains unpredictable. It is a place defined by contradictions: order and chaos, confinement and the open desert, strict rules and the unpredictable nature of human desperation. For many men, the first night inside Victorville is unforgettable. As the cell door slams shut, the temperature drops with the desert night, and the air feels colder than the steel around them. The silence outside the walls, a silence that stretches across the Mojave, becomes strangely unsettling. And it is in that silence that reality settles in. This isn't just a prison. This is Victorville. A place where the desert watches everything. The yard at USP Victorville is more than just a stretch of concrete, chain-link fences, and sun-baked dirt. It is the theater where the prison's true power dynamics are performed every day. For new inmates, the first step onto that yard is a baptism by fire, an initiation into a world where every glance, every gesture, even the way you lace your shoes, can be interpreted as a challenge, a sign of weakness, or a signal of allegiance. The yard is divided into zones. Each zone is informally claimed by certain groups or individuals. Within these zones, hierarchies are enforced ruthlessly, often without the intervention of correctional officers. Those hierarchies are not always official. They are the product of reputation, fear, and respect earned over years behind bars. A man's history, the tattoos on his arms, the stories whispered from cell to cell all contribute to his standing. In Victorville, a name carries as much weight as a weapon. Gangs maintain control through a combination of strategy and intimidation. The Serenos and Nortinos, despite their California rivalries, often assert dominance by sheer numbers, forming temporary alliances with smaller groups or individuals seeking protection. Bloods and Crips bring their street codes into the federal system, turning sections of the yard into territories marked by graffiti, colored clothing, and unspoken agreements. The independent inmates, meanwhile, navigate a tightrope, trying to avoid unnecessary confrontations while protecting themselves from the inevitable pressures that arise from these alliances. The yard is a place where stories spread faster than whispers. When an incident occurs, whether it's a fight, a theft, or a coordinated attack, news travels across the prison like wildfire. The communication is subtle yet precise. A glance, a cough, a question asked with a particular tone. Inmates learn quickly that silence can be both protective and dangerous. Say too little, and suspicion arises. Say too much, and you mark yourself as a potential informant. Every word, every movement is a calculated risk. Conflict on the yard can erupt in seconds. Two men exchanging words may seem harmless to an outsider, but in Victorville, a comment about looking at someone funny can escalate to a full-scale fight. Weapons are improvised. Shanks carved from toothbrushes, metal shards hidden in laundry, or even sharpened pens. Violence is rarely accidental, it is strategic. For those entrenched in the prison's gang politics, a single act can redefine the social landscape. When an attack happens, retaliation is expected, often perpetuating cycles of violence that can last for months. Despite the danger, the yard is also where routines enforce a sense of order. Morning exercises, work call preparation, and recreation periods are structured and timed, giving inmates the illusion of normalcy. Yet underneath that surface, every step, every interaction is a negotiation for survival. Even walking from the housing unit to the yard requires awareness of who is watching, who is approaching, and which alliances might shift in the coming minutes. Correctional officers patrol the yard with careful attention, but their presence cannot eliminate the underlying social tensions. Officers rely on observation, body language, and institutional knowledge to prevent escalations, yet they know they are always one step behind the subtleties of inmate interactions. Most officers respect the unwritten rules because trying to intervene directly in a gang feud can be more dangerous than letting the situation run its course under controlled supervision. Victorville's yard is also a place of paradoxical freedom. Inmates who master the codes of conduct, who understand who to avoid, when to assert themselves, and how to negotiate alliances, can move through the space with a certain degree of autonomy. They can carve out their own areas for sunbathing, conversation, or simply passing time. But that freedom is conditional. It exists only as long as the inmate maintains credibility, avoids disrespect, and keeps enemies at bay. And then there is the desert itself, always present beyond the fences. Its heat beats down on the yard mercilessly, creating mirages that distort vision and intensify exhaustion. At night, temperatures plummet, bringing cold so sharp that even hardened men flinch. The desert mirrors the environment inside the prison, extreme, unforgiving, and indifferent. Survival requires adaptation, strategy, and constant awareness. For many inmates, The yard is where reputations are made or destroyed. A single fight, a single alliance, a single misstep can determine a man's trajectory for years to come. New inmates learn this quickly, understanding that Victorville's true lessons are not taught in classrooms or through programs, they are written in blood, etched into the psyche of every man who dares to walk its yard. By the end of the day, as the yard empties and inmates retreat to their cells, the silence returns, heavy with tension and anticipation. In Victorville, even rest is temporary. The desert waits. The walls wait. And tomorrow, the yard will awaken again, ready to test every man who calls the fortress home. The moment the cell door slams shut at USP Victorville, the world changes. One instant, you're part of the larger structure, the housing unit, the yard, the institution, and the next, you're isolated, confined to a small rectangle of concrete, metal, and your own thoughts. For many men, the cell is not just a space to sleep, it is the crucible where survival instincts sharpen, alliances are strategized, and reputations are tested in the silence between walls. Cells at Victorville are utilitarian and unforgiving. A single metal bunk, a bolted table with 2 attached chairs, a stainless steel sink, and a toilet occupy the entire space. Light from narrow, barred windows illuminates the room, but never enough to make it feel open or safe. The environment forces a psychological adjustment. Inmates quickly learn that the walls themselves are as much a presence as the people outside. Every sound, the metallic clang of a cell door, the muted shout from a neighbor, the distant echo of a footstep in the hallway resonates with meaning. For newcomers, the first nights in the cell are the hardest. Many are consumed by fear, wondering whether the inmate in the neighboring cell is friend or foe, whether the guard is paying attention, or whether a rumor they've heard about Victorville is about to materialize. Some pace their small floor, others sit silently, watching every shadow, calculating every potential threat. The cell forces a kind of introspection that few men outside the prison walls ever experience, introspection colored by tension, survival, and the constant awareness that any lapse could be dangerous. Inmates quickly learn the unspoken hierarchies of their units. Cells themselves are territorial. Proximity to certain inmates can be a blessing or a curse. Aligning with the right neighbor might offer protection, access to contraband, or insider knowledge of prison politics. Aligning with the wrong one can place a man in danger, either immediately or in slow, insidious ways. Tattoos, clothing, gestures, and even nicknames are read constantly. In Victorville, every detail carries information about identity, loyalty, and potential threat level. Routines structure life within the cells, but they are a double-edged sword. Meals arrive at precise times, recreation periods are scheduled, and work call or education programs demand punctuality. While routines offer a rhythm to life in isolation, they also reinforce the constant observation, both by staff and by fellow inmates. Movement, even within the cell, is never casual. Every gesture is noted, catalogued, and interpreted. For those who understand the system, this awareness becomes a survival skill. For others, it becomes a source of constant anxiety. Communication in the cells is equally strategic. Conversations are often coded, careful, and indirect. Inmates learn to read tone, pauses, and context for hidden meanings. A casual comment might be a veiled warning, a seemingly innocuous question might carry a threat. Gossip spreads fast, and misinformation is a tool as powerful as any physical weapon. The cell, in essence, is both a sanctuary and a battlefield, a confined space where every word and movement counts. Isolation is perhaps the most difficult challenge for long-term inmates. Some men spend months in restricted housing, facing the intense psychological strain of minimal human interaction. Victorville has a history of placing particularly violent or disruptive inmates in such conditions. While intended to prevent incidents, extended isolation tests mental endurance. In these cells, men confront themselves in ways few outside can imagine, often emerging hardened, sometimes broken, but always changed. Yet even in confinement, there are opportunities for small victories. Some inmates find solace in letters, books, or personal rituals. Others develop intricate routines, folding clothes a certain way, organizing possessions meticulously, or tracing patterns in the walls with their eyes. These acts, small as they may seem, assert control in an environment designed to strip it away. Victorville teaches that survival is not just physical, it is mental, strategic, and deeply personal. Within these walls, reputations are built as carefully as in the yard. Stories circulate from one housing unit to another, tales of inmates who held their ground against assaults, who outmaneuvered rivals, or who earned respect through acts of cunning or restraint. Reputation becomes currency, sometimes more valuable than any commissary item. And for newcomers, establishing credibility quickly can mean the difference between protection and vulnerability. Victorville's cells are more than rooms, they are arenas of psychological warfare, observation, and social strategy. Every inmate, whether violent or compliant, learns to navigate this microcosm of survival. The cell isolates and challenges, constrains and exposes, forcing every man to confront the reality of life within the desert fortress. Here, the battle is not only with others, it is with time, with mind, and with the relentless pressure of confinement itself. By nightfall, as lights dim across the housing units and silence settles, the men of Victorville retreat into the complex rhythm of their own thoughts. The desert outside waits patiently, indifferent to their struggles, and the walls of the fortress remain steadfast. In this environment, survival is not just about avoiding harm, it is about understanding the subtle interplay of power, perception, and presence within every square foot of concrete and steel. Within USP Victorville, the visible structure of concrete and wire is only part of the story. The invisible architecture, the unspoken rules of gang politics, dictates daily life. Here, survival is less about brute strength and more about understanding the delicate balance of power, alliances, and intimidation that exists beyond the watchful eyes of correctional officers. In this desert fortress, respect is earned, fear is leveraged, and betrayal can happen in the blink of an eye. The major prison gangs, Serenos, Nortinos, Bloods, Crips, and the Paisar Mafia maintain influence through both overt and subtle methods. Territory is controlled through informal zoning, certain sections of the yard, housing units, or work areas are de facto claimed by these groups. Inmates entering a zone not aligned with their group must tread carefully. Missteps, carrying the wrong color, approaching the wrong table, even walking with an inappropriate posture can provoke conflict. For newcomers, understanding these dynamics is a matter of life and death. The first lesson is observation. Inmates watch the yard and the housing units like hawks, noting which groups hold power, which individuals command respect, and who acts as an enforcer or mediator. Tattoos are a visible language. A teardrop may signal a murder, a specific symbol may indicate gang affiliation, and missing tattoos may mark someone as inexperienced or vulnerable. Each mark tells a story, and reading it incorrectly can have devastating consequences. Communication, too, is coded. Messages move quickly through whispers, gestures, and even seemingly innocuous actions. A nod, a glance, or a placement of a chair can carry meaning. Inmates learn that words can betray intentions, so much of the social maneuvering happens silently, with body language serving as the currency of influence. Conflict in Victorville rarely erupts without reason. Fights are calculated, often premeditated, and used to assert dominance or punish perceived slights. Weapon construction is a meticulous craft. Inmates conceal blades, sharpened pens, or metal fragments, knowing the precise timing and circumstances that will give them maximum advantage. Violence is not random, it is a strategic tool to reinforce hierarchies. Alliances are equally strategic. Temporary partnerships are forged to navigate a particular threat or to gain protection in the yard or housing units. But these alliances are fragile. Loyalty is constantly tested, and betrayal is common. Inmates often weigh the potential benefits of allegiance against the risks, understanding that Victorville punishes miscalculations severely. Power is also psychological. Inmates use fear to control others, leveraging intimidation, reputation, and rumor. A single violent act or even a threatening story can ripple across units, establishing control without further conflict. Conversely, reputations can crumble overnight if an inmate is perceived as weak, indecisive, or easily manipulated. Maintaining respect requires constant vigilance, a keen understanding of social hierarchies, and a willingness to act decisively when necessary. Despite these pressures, some inmates manage to thrive. They develop reputations as mediators, strategists, or respected figures within the hierarchy. These men often survive by understanding not only the rules but also the subtleties, the unspoken agreements, the grudges that simmer beneath the surface, and the delicate dance of intimidation and negotiation. They act with calculated precision, knowing when to assert dominance and when to retreat. Correctional officers, while present and vigilant, are only partially aware of these complex dynamics. Their authority enforces the basic rules, but the deeper social structures operate largely beyond their reach. Officers rely on observation, experience, and intuition to prevent incidents, but the subtleties of alliances, rivalries, and power plays are often invisible to anyone outside the inmate population. Victorville's gang politics also influence the prison's programs and work assignments. Certain groups assert control over access to educational opportunities, vocational work, or recreational resources. Inmates learn quickly which doors they can knock on safely and which ones are controlled by powerful figures within the population. Every interaction, whether in a classroom, the yard, or the cafeteria, is filtered through the lens of alliances and power structures. The stakes are high. A single miscalculated move can result in isolation, assault, or worse. Yet for those who navigate these rules with skill, the rewards are significant: protection, influence, and a relative measure of control in a place designed to strip them of autonomy. Victorville, in essence, is not just a prison, it is a living organism, sustained and shaped by the interactions of its inmates. Every fight, every alliance, every whispered warning contributes to a constantly evolving social ecosystem. To survive here, a man must understand not only the physical environment of the desert fortress but also the invisible codes that govern its inhabitants. In this place, power is invisible, danger is constant, and survival is never guaranteed. Those who succeed are not always the strongest, they are the most perceptive, the most calculating, and the most adaptable. For newcomers and veterans alike, the lesson is clear: understand the politics, respect the hierarchy, and never, ever let your guard down. USP Victorville's reputation is not built solely on its architecture, security measures, or harsh environment. It is earned in the incidents that ripple through its walls, shaping fear, respect, and survival for every inmate who calls it home. The prison has seen riots, assaults, and high-profile conflicts that expose the delicate balance between control and chaos, showing just how quickly the desert fortress can erupt into violence. While the Bureau of Prisons maintains strict procedures, Victorville's history is punctuated by moments where those procedures were pushed to the edge. One notable event involved a large-scale riot that began with a seemingly minor altercation between two inmates in the recreational yard. What started as a verbal disagreement escalated in minutes, fueled by pre-existing gang tensions and the quick spread of rumors. Within the hour, inmates had barricaded sections of the yard, improvised weapons appeared, and officers scrambled to contain the situation before it spilled further into the housing units. In incidents like these, timing and environment matter. The desert, with its oppressive heat and blinding sunlight, plays a psychological role, amplifying tempers and fatigue. Inmates' reactions are often accelerated by stress, hunger, and the intense pressure of the prison's social hierarchy. Those familiar with Victorville know that the environment is as much a participant in any conflict as the men themselves. High-profile assaults also leave lasting legacies. Certain inmates, notorious for previous acts of violence, can turn small disputes into defining moments of power. These events send clear signals across the institution: who can act with impunity, who is vulnerable, and who holds the most influence. The stories of these incidents become part of the oral history of Victorville, passed down to every new group of arrivals as both warning and guide. One of the prison's most infamous cases involved an inmate who had previously commanded influence in multiple correctional facilities. Known for his ability to manipulate alliances and orchestrate strategic strikes, he used Victorville's yard to assert dominance within days of arrival. His approach was meticulous. He observed the yard, studied rival groups, and quietly built networks of support. When conflict eventually erupted, he had positioned himself to emerge unscathed while others around him faced the brunt of retaliation. Stories of his rise spread quickly, reinforcing the lesson that Victorville rewards both cunning and preparation. Beyond interpersonal violence, The prison has had incidents involving contraband and smuggling operations. Inmates demonstrate remarkable ingenuity, hiding cell phones, drugs, and other prohibited items using the smallest possible spaces or exploiting vulnerabilities in the system. These operations are never without risk. Discovery can lead to lockdowns, solitary confinement, or targeted attacks, but for those who succeed, control over contraband can translate into influence, leverage, and respect within the inmate population. Despite these dangers, Victorville continues to function as a high-security institution. Correctional officers undergo extensive training to detect signs of brewing conflict, manage large groups during emergency situations, and intervene without escalating tensions. Their presence is constant, but their success is measured not only in arrests or confiscations but also in their ability to maintain order while navigating the subtle, unspoken rules of inmate behavior. The prison's notoriety has also extended beyond its walls. Media reports occasionally highlight incidents, drawing public attention to the extreme measures required to maintain control in federal institutions. These reports, while informative, capture only a fraction of life inside the desert fortress. The full reality, the nuanced power dynamics, the psychological pressures, and the unrelenting social tests is largely invisible to outsiders, leaving most people with only partial understanding of what it truly means to survive at Victorville. Yet, for inmates, survival is not about notoriety, it is about strategy, timing, and mental fortitude. Each incident, whether minor or extreme, reinforces the reality that Victorville is not a place where mistakes are forgiven. Lessons are learned in real time, and consequences can be immediate and severe. By the end of the day, after the yard has emptied, the housing units have quieted, and the desert heat fades into night, the echoes of violence, strategy, and social maneuvering remain. Inmates who witnessed or participated in an incident carry its lessons forward, adjusting their tactics, their alliances, and their behavior. Every fight, riot, and high-profile event becomes part of the prison's fabric, shaping the experiences of everyone who lives within the fortress walls. Victorville is more than a facility. It is a crucible where survival is tested daily, where power is constantly negotiated, and where every incident, no matter how small, leaves an imprint on the desert landscape and the men trapped within it. To understand Victorville is to understand that control is fleeting, danger is constant, and the desert waits patiently for the next eruption. USP Victorville stands as a stark reminder of what it takes to contain the most dangerous individuals in the federal system. Behind its walls, the desert air hums with tension, alliances are forged and broken in the blink of an eye, and every day is a calculated exercise in survival. For the men who live within this fortress, the rules are clear: adapt, stay alert, and respect the invisible codes that govern every interaction. But beyond the violence, beyond the hierarchy, Victorville is also a testament to human resilience. Inmates navigate impossible circumstances, balancing strategy, mental endurance, and fleeting moments of humanity in a place designed to strip it away. The desert is indifferent, the walls are unyielding, and yet life, complex, raw, and unrelenting, persists within this high-security labyrinth. If this journey into the hidden world of USP Victorville gave you a deeper understanding of the struggles, strategies, and survival inside one of America's toughest prisons, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, ring the notification bell, and share this video with friends who crave real, unfiltered insights into life behind the walls. Victorville may be a fortress, but the stories of its inmates, their resilience, and their struggles are far more revealing than any wall of concrete ever could. The desert watches, the fortress stands, and the lessons of Victorville echo far beyond its gates. Thanks for watching, and remember, the reality of prison is harsher than fiction, and the desert never forgets.